The December wind howled through the streets of Ridgemont like a living thing, hungry and vicious, tearing at anything foolish enough to stand in its way. Jessica Torres pressed her face against the frosted window of the downtown bus shelter, watching her breath fog the glass as she counted the money in her worn leather wallet for the third time that hour. $43. That was it. That was everything standing between her and complete disaster. Behind her, bundled in a pink puffy coat 2 sizes too big, her daughter Emma hummed softly, oblivious to the crushing weight pressing down on her mother's chest. Emma was 6 years old, gap-toothed and bright-eyed, with her father's dark curls and her mother's stubborn optimism. She clutched a stuffed elephant named Buttons, the one toy that had survived 3 moves in 2 years, and drew pictures in the condensation on the glass with one small finger. "Mama, look, it's a snowflake," Emma said, her voice carrying that particular sweetness that only children possess, the kind that makes your heart ache because you know the world will eventually steal it away. Jessica turned and managed a smile. "It's beautiful, baby. Is the bus coming soon?" "I'm hungry." "Soon, sweetie. Real soon." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. The bus had been late for 20 minutes. They'd already been out here for 40. Jessica's fingers had gone numb inside her threadbare gloves, and Emma's cheeks were turning pink from the cold. But they couldn't go back to the apartment. There was no apartment to go back to. The eviction notice had been taped to their door that morning. Final notice. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises or law enforcement will be contacted. Jessica had read it 3 times before the words actually registered, before the reality of it sank into her bones like ice water. She'd lost her job at the call center 6 weeks ago. Budget cuts, they said. Last hired, first fired. She'd been picking up whatever work she could find since then. Cleaning houses, waitressing at diners, walking dogs for people who had more money than time. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. The rent was $875 a month. She'd been short since November. The landlord, a man named Phil Marconi who wore too much cologne and looked at her in a way that made her skin crawl, had been patient at first. Then he'd been persistent. Then he'd been threatening. And now he'd been final. 24 hours. That's all she had to figure out where she and Emma were going to sleep tonight, tomorrow night, the night after that. Her sister lived 3 states away and could barely support her own kids. Her mother had passed 2 years ago. Emma's father was somewhere in Nevada or Arizona, last she'd heard, dodging child support and responsibility with equal skill. She had $43, a 6-year-old daughter, and nowhere to go. The bus finally arrived with a hiss of hydraulics and a blast of diesel exhaust. Jessica grabbed Emma's hand and climbed aboard, feeding their crumpled bills into the fare machine. The driver, a woman with kind eyes and gray hair, pulled back in a tight bun, glanced at Emma, and didn't ask for the child fare. "You two stay warm," she said quietly. Jessica nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat, and guided Emma to a seat near the back. They rode in silence through streets she knew by heart, past the elementary school where Emma went, with its chain-link fence and peeling paint, past the convenience store where she bought day-old bread in dinner cans, past the church with the soup kitchen that served meals on Wednesdays and Sundays, past all the landmarks of her small, struggling life. Emma fell asleep against her shoulder, buttons tucked under one arm. Jessica stared out the window and tried to think, really think. She could call the shelter, but she tried that last month when things were getting bad. They'd been full. Winter always filled the shelters. She could try the church, ask if they knew of anyone with a spare room, but pride stuck in her throat like broken glass. She'd already borrowed money from the pastor's emergency fund twice. She couldn't go back again. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out carefully, trying not to wake Emma. A text from her old co-worker, Denise. "Saw something weird you might be interested in. County's auctioning a property up in White Pine Ridge. Starting bid is $800. Probably a dump, but thought of you. Link attached." Jessica stared at the message, her heart doing something strange in her chest. $800. She didn't have $800. She had 43. But curiosity, that dangerous thing, made her click the link anyway. The page loaded slowly on her cracked phone screen. County property auction, December 19th, 10 a.m. She scrolled through listings of foreclosed homes, tax-delinquent properties, land parcels with complicated legal issues. Most started at thousands of dollars, some at tens of thousands. Then she found it. Lot 47, the Summit Lodge, White Pine Ridge Road. 12 rooms for 1,200 square feet, built in 1968. Starting bid, $800. Property sold as is. No inspections permitted prior to sale. Note, property located in remote mountain area, accessible only by private road. Buyer assumes all risk. Jessica zoomed in on the single, grainy photograph. It showed a large A-frame structure, dark wood and tall windows, surrounded by pine trees heavy with snow. It looked like something from a postcard, like a place where families went on ski vacations and drank hot chocolate by roaring fires. It looked impossible. She clicked through to the property history. The Summit Lodge had been built by a man named Victor Brennan, some kind of entrepreneur who'd made his fortune in timber and real estate. He'd used it as a private retreat until his death in 1982. After that, it had passed through several hands. A developer who'd planned to turn it into a resort, a religious organization that wanted it for retreats, a couple who dreamed of running a bed and breakfast. None of them had lasted more than a year. The notes section explained why. Property experiences severe weather conditions, including heavy snowfall and ice. Access road, frequently impassable November through March. No utilities connected to main grid. Requires generator power and well water. Previous owners cited extreme isolation and maintenance costs as reasons for abandonment. In other words, it was in the middle of nowhere, cut off from civilization for months at a time, and required someone either crazy or desperate enough to deal with it. Jessica read the listing 3 more times. Her logical mind, the part that had kept her alive and functional through 2 years of barely scraping by, told her this was insane. She didn't have $800. Even if she did, what would she do with a massive lodge in the mountains? She didn't know anything about generators or well water or surviving in isolation. She'd lived her entire life in cities and suburbs, places with streetlights and grocery stores and neighbors close enough to hear through the walls. But another part of her, the part that was tired of being afraid, tired of counting pennies, tired of watching her daughter go without, whispered something different. What if? The bus reached the end of the line. Jessica woke Emma gently, and they stepped out into the cold December afternoon. The library was 2 blocks away, warm and free, a place they could spend a few hours before figuring out what came next. Inside, Emma ran to the children's section with buttons tucked under her arm, while Jessica claimed a computer terminal. She logged into her email and found the full auction information from the county website. The auction was tomorrow morning at 10. She'd need to register as a bidder, which required showing up in person with a valid ID and proof of funds. Proof of funds. She had $43. Jessica closed her eyes and did the math she'd been avoiding. Her last paycheck, the one she'd saved for this month's rent that no longer mattered, was sitting in her bank account. Direct deposit had hit 2 days ago. $782. Combined with the $43 in her wallet, that was $825. Enough to bid. Maybe even enough to win if nobody else wanted a remote, winterlocked lodge with no power and no easy access. But if she spent that money on a property, she'd have nothing left. No money for food, no money for gas, no money for anything. She'd be gambling everything on a building she'd never seen, in a location she'd never been to, with no backup plan if it didn't work out. It was the single most reckless thing she'd ever considered. And yet, she pulled up her banking app and stared at the number. $782. It represented 2 weeks of answering phones, of dealing with angry customers and impossible quotas, of driving Emma to her sister's house an hour away, because the after-school program cost too much. It represented survival. Barely, temporarily, but survival nonetheless. Or it could represent something else. Something bigger. Something that felt suspiciously like hope. Jessica glanced over at Emma, who was sprawled on a beanbag chair reading a picture book about a bear who lived in a mountain cave. Her daughter's pink coat was still zipped to her chin because even the library wasn't quite warm enough, and her worn sneakers had a hole forming near the left toe. She deserved better than this. Better than bus shelters and eviction notices, and a mother who couldn't give her anything except apologies and empty promises. Jessica made her decision. She spent the next 2 hours researching everything she could find about White Pine Ridge and the Summit Lodge. The town, such as it was, consisted of about 200 year-round residents scattered across a mountain valley about 90 miles north of Ridgemont. It was known for extreme weather, particularly in winter when snowfall could reach 6 feet in a single storm. The access roads were maintained by the county, but only the main highway got regular plowing. Private roads, like the one leading to the Summit Lodge, were the owner's responsibility. She found old newspaper articles about Victor Brennan, the original builder. He'd been a self-made millionaire, someone who'd started with nothing and built an empire through shrewd investments and relentless work ethic. The lodge had been his escape, his refuge from the pressures of business. He died there, actually, of a heart attack while sitting in front of the fireplace. His family had tried to sell it, but the isolation and maintenance requirements scared off most buyers. The few online reviews she found from the lodge's brief stint as a bed and breakfast were mixed. Some guests had loved the solitude and natural beauty. Others had complained about the lack of cell service, the unreliable generator, the way snow could trap you inside for days at a time. One review, from 7 years ago, caught her attention. The Summit Lodge is not for the faint of heart. But if you can handle the isolation and the work required to keep it running, it's the closest thing to paradise I've ever experienced. Waking up to those mountain views, the absolute silence, the feeling of being completely removed from the chaos of modern life. It's worth every challenge. Jessica closed the browser and sat back in her chair. She had no idea what she was doing. No idea if this was brave or stupid or some combination of both. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Staying on the path she was on led nowhere good. Eviction today meant sleeping in her car tonight, meant shelters and handouts, and watching Emma's bright optimism slowly dim as she realized her mother couldn't protect her from the world's cruelty. At least this path, crazy as it was, led somewhere different. Somewhere that might, possibly, with a tremendous amount of luck and determination, lead to something better. That night, Jessica withdrew $782 from the ATM outside the grocery store. She and Emma slept in her car, an ancient Honda Civic with a broken heater and 187,000 miles on the odometer, parked in the lot behind the 24-hour diner. Emma curled up in the back seat under every blanket they owned, while Jessica reclined the driver's seat and tried not to think about what she was about to do. The next morning, December 19th, dawned gray and bitterly cold. Jessica bought them both hot chocolate and day-old donuts from the diner, then drove to the county courthouse. Emma came with her, clutching buttons and asking questions Jessica couldn't fully answer. "Where are we going, Mama?" "To an auction, baby." "What's an auction?" "It's where people bid on things. Like a contest to see who wants something the most." "What are we bidding on?" Jessica pulled into the courthouse parking lot and turned off the engine. She looked at her daughter in the rearview mirror, at those trusting brown eyes and sleep-mussed curls. "A house, Emma. We're bidding on a house. We're getting a house." Emma's face lit up with an excitement that made Jessica's chest ache. "A real house with rooms and a yard?" "Maybe, sweetie, if we win. But it's in the mountains, really far away. It might be cold and hard and scary." Emma considered this seriously, hugging buttons tight. "Will we be together?" "Yes, always together. Then it'll be okay. Adventures are supposed to be scary. That's what makes them adventures." Jessica laughed, a sound that came out half-sob. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from you, Mama." The auction room was on the second floor, a sterile space with fluorescent lights and uncomfortable chairs. About 30 people were scattered throughout the room, some in business suits with leather briefcases, others in work clothes with weathered hands and cautious eyes. Jessica signed in at the registration desk, received bidder number 47, and found a seat in the back row with Emma beside her. The auctioneer, a thin man in his 50s with reading glasses perched on his nose, called the room to order at exactly 10 o'clock. He explained the rules. All sales final. Payment due within 48 hours, property sold as is with no warranties or guarantees, and began working through the list. Jessica's heart hammered against her ribs as property after property was called and sold. A foreclosed ranch house went for $23,000. A commercial lot downtown went for $47,000. An apartment building with code violations went for $79,000. Then, 40 minutes into the auctioneer adjusted his glasses and read from his notes. Lot 47. The Summit Lodge, White Pine Ridge Road. 12 rooms, 4,200 square feet, remote mountain location. Starting bid is $800. Silence filled the room. Jessica could hear her own heartbeat, loud and insistent in her ears. Nobody was moving. Nobody was raising their paddles or bidder numbers. They were all just sitting there, flipping through their packets, ignoring what seemed like the deal of the century. $800 for a 12-room lodge, folks, the auctioneer said, his tone suggesting even he thought this was absurd. That's less than $70 per room. Anyone interested? More silence. A man in the third row laughed quietly and said to his companion, "You couldn't pay me to take that place. Last guy who tried to renovate it lost his shirt. Snowbound 6 months a year, no power, no road access. It's a money pit." The woman next to him nodded. "I heard the Brennan family tried for years to unload it. Finally, just let it go to tax auction. Nobody wants to deal with that kind of headache." Jessica's hand trembled as she raised her bidder number. "800, she said, her voice barely audible. Every head in the room turned to look at her. The auctioneer peered over his glasses, seeming genuinely surprised. "I have 800 from bidder 47. Do I hear 900? Nothing." The silence stretched out, heavy and expectant. "Going once at 800, the auctioneer said. "This is a substantial property, folks. Over 4,000 square feet. Beautiful mountain views. Going twice at 800. Still nothing." The business suits went back to their packets. The weathered hands stayed in laps. Nobody wanted this problem disguised as an opportunity. "Sold to bidder 47 for $800, the auctioneer said, bringing his gavel down with a sharp crack that echoed like a gunshot. Jessica sat frozen, her raised hand still in the air. Emma tugged on her sleeve. "Mama? Did we win?" "Yeah, baby," Jessica whispered, her voice hollow with shock. "We won." The clerk called her to the desk after the auction concluded. A bored woman in her 40s with reading glasses on a chain processed the paperwork with mechanical efficiency. "Congratulations on your purchase. Payment is due in full by 5 p.m. on December 21st. Cash or cashier's check only. No exceptions." Jessica counted out her money with shaking hands. $800 in 20s, 10s, and 5s. Everything she had. The clerk counted it twice, stamped the receipt, and slid a large manila envelope across the desk. "Keys are inside, along with the deed and property information. There's a map to the access road, but I'll warn you, nobody's been up there in months. You might need a 4-wheel drive vehicle, maybe even chains depending on conditions." "How bad are the conditions?" The clerk looked at her properly for the first time, taking in Jessica's worn coat, Emma's too big pink jacket, the desperation that must have been visible on both their faces. "Honey," she said, her voice softening slightly, "that property is 45 minutes up a mountain road that hasn't been maintained in years. The lodge itself has been empty since 2019. No power, no heat, no phone service. Even if you make it up there, you'll be completely on your own. You understand that?" Jessica nodded. "I understand. Do you have survival gear? Food? A way to generate heat? We'll figure it out." The clerk studied her for a long moment, then reached under the desk and pulled out a business card. "My brother runs the mountain hardware store on Route 9. Tell him Linda sent you. They'll give you a discount on supplies." She paused. "You're going to need a lot of supplies." Jessica took the card, gratitude flooding through her. "Thank you. Really, thank you." Outside the courthouse, standing in the parking lot with Emma's hand in hers and the manila envelope clutched to her chest, Jessica finally let herself feel the full weight of what she'd done. She'd spent every dollar she had on a property she'd never seen, in a location she'd never been to, with no idea how to survive in the wilderness, and a 6-year-old daughter depending on her. It was the most reckless, irresponsible, desperate thing she'd ever done. And it was too late to take it back. "Can we go see our house now, Mama?" Emma asked, bouncing on her toes. Jessica looked down at her daughter's excited face, at the hope shining in those brown eyes, and made a decision. Forward was the only direction left. "Yeah, baby. Let's go see our house." The Mountain Hardware store was exactly what Jessica needed. A cluttered, slightly chaotic space filled with everything from camping gear to power tools to bulk foods and 5-gallon buckets. The man behind the counter, a bearded giant named Tom, who must have been Linda's brother, listened to Jessica's situation with growing concern. "You bought the Summit Lodge?" "I did. With a 6-year-old kid?" "Yes." "In December?" "I know how it sounds." Tom rubbed his face with one massive hand. "Lady, that place has been sitting empty for 6 years. The generator probably doesn't work. The pipes are likely frozen or burst. The roof might have collapsed under snow load. And there's a storm coming in tomorrow night that's supposed to dump 3 feet of snow across the ridge." Jessica felt her stomach drop. 3 feet. At least. Maybe more. If you go up there now, you'll be snowed in for days, possibly weeks. No way to get out if something goes wrong. Emma tugged on Jessica's sleeve. "Mama, I'm scared." Jessica knelt down and pulled her daughter close. "It's okay, baby. We're going to be okay." She looked up at Tom. "I don't have a choice. I have $25 left and nowhere else to go. That lodge is all we have." Tom stared at her for a long moment, then sighed deeply. All right, damn it. Give me that $25. I'll put together what you absolutely need to survive up there for a few weeks." "I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. Linda texted me. She said you looked like you needed help, and my sister's never wrong about these things." He grabbed a shopping cart and started moving through the store with purpose. "You'll need a camp stove and propane, water purification tablets in case the well's contaminated, a high-quality sleeping bag rated for negative temperatures, emergency candles, waterproof matches, freeze-dried meals, first aid supplies, a hand crank radio for weather updates." He piled item after item into the cart, moving faster as he mentally calculated what a woman and child would need to survive in an isolated mountain lodge during a blizzard. Jessica watched the total climb with growing anxiety until Tom noticed her expression. "Don't worry about the price. I'm giving you cost on everything, and some of this is old stock I need to clear anyway." He disappeared into a back room and emerged with a heavy-duty sleeping bag and a winter coat that looked like it could withstand Arctic conditions. "This coat belonged to my daughter. She's away at college now. It should fit your girl." Emma's eyes went wide as Tom knelt down and helped her into the coat. It was purple with a hood and looked brand new. "It's so warm," she whispered. "It's rated a -40, Tom said gruffly. "You keep that on, understand? Don't take it off unless you're somewhere genuinely warm." By the time Tom finished, the cart was overflowing. He rang everything up, and Jessica watched the register display with her heart in her throat. When the total appeared, $487.50, she felt dizzy. "I only have $25. Tom waved her off. "25 is fine. Consider the rest alone. You pay me back when you can, whenever that might be." "Deal." Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to say. Say you'll be careful up there. Say you'll use that hand crank radio to listen for weather updates. Say you won't take stupid risks with your daughter's safety. I promise. All of that. I promise." Tom helped them load everything into Jessica's ancient Civic. The car sat lower on its suspension, weighed down with supplies. He also threw in a set of tire chains, showing Jessica how to install them, and a heavy-duty flashlight with extra batteries. "The access road is marked with a green gate about 40 miles up Route 9, he said, sketching a map on the back of a receipt. "Take County Road 12 west, then follow the ridge line. The gates. Got a combination lock. The code should be in your paperwork. Once you're through the gate, it's another 5 miles up a private road to the lodge. The road's going to be rough, probably snow-covered. Take it slow. If your car gets stuck, stay with it and use these emergency flares to signal for help." He pressed a package of road flares into her hands. "I mean it. Don't try to walk out. People die that way." Jessica nodded, overwhelmed by his kindness and the magnitude of what she was about to attempt. "Thank you, Tom. For everything. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you make it through the winter and come back down in one piece. He looked at Emma, who was sitting in the back seat, examining her new purple coat with wonder. You take care of your mama, okay? She's pretty brave to do this for you. I will, Emma promised solemnly. The drive up Route 9 took longer than expected. The road wound through increasingly dense forests, climbing steadily into the mountains. Snow lined the shoulders, growing deeper the higher they went. Jessica's car handled poorly on the icy patches, and twice she felt the tires slip before the chains caught and pulled them forward. Emma sang songs in the back seat, making up lyrics about mountains and snow and adventures. Her cheerfulness helped calm Jessica's racing thoughts, gave her something to focus on besides the growing fear that she'd just made a catastrophic mistake. The green gate appeared exactly where Tom had said it would, nearly hidden by pine branches heavy with snow. Jessica got out and approached the combination lock, her fingers numb despite her gloves. The code from her paperwork, 4721, clicked through smoothly, and the gate swung open with a rusty squeal. Beyond it, the private road looked more like a suggestion than an actual path. Snow covered everything, broken only by the tracks of some animal. Deer, probably, or maybe elk. Jessica got back in the car and said a silent prayer before driving through. The road climbed steeply, winding between towering pines and aspens stripped bare for winter. Several times, Jessica's car struggled to find purchase, the tires spinning before the chains caught. Her knuckles were white on the steering wheel, and sweat dripped down her spine despite the cold. Mama, look! Emma pressed her face to the window. Everything's so pretty. It's like a fairy tale. Jessica looked. Emma was right. The landscape was breathtaking. Pristine snow, ancient trees, mountain peaks visible in the distance against a darkening sky. It was beautiful in a way that made you understand why people wrote poems about wilderness, why they talked about finding God in nature. It was also terrifying in its vastness, its indifference to human survival. After what felt like hours but was probably only 30 minutes, the trees opened up and Jessica saw it, the Summit Lodge. Her breath caught in her chest. The photographs hadn't done it justice. The A-frame structure rose 3 stories high, its dark-wood exterior weathered but solid-looking. Massive windows faced south, reflecting the late afternoon light. A wraparound deck, buried under 2 feet of snow, circled the first floor. Behind the lodge, the mountain rose even higher, and to the south, the valley opened up to reveal a view that belonged on postcards. It was magnificent. It was impossible. It was hers. Jessica parked in what she assumed was the driveway, though it was hard to tell under all the snow. She sat there for a moment, just staring at the building, trying to process what she'd done. Is that it, Mama? Is that our house? Yeah, baby. That's our house. It's huge. It's like a castle. Can we go inside? Jessica pulled the keys from the manila envelope with shaking hands. Let's go inside. The snow was knee-deep as they waded toward the front door. Jessica had to carry Emma part of the way, her daughter giggling and trying to catch snowflakes on her tongue. The front door, heavy wood with an ornate iron handle, looked untouched by time despite years of neglect. Jessica tried 3 different keys before finding the right one. The lock turned smoothly, and the door swung inward with barely a creak. Cold air rushed out to meet them, but it wasn't the musty smell of abandonment Jessica had expected. Instead, it smelled like wood and pine and something faintly sweet like cedar or sandalwood. She stepped inside, and her jaw dropped. The interior opened up into a massive great room with a cathedral ceiling supported by thick beams. A stone fireplace dominated the north wall, big enough to stand inside. Furniture sat covered in dust sheets, suggesting shapes but not details. A loft ran along the second floor, accessible by a wide staircase with a hand-carved railing. Emma ran ahead, her new purple coat a bright spot of color in the dim space. Mama, there's a giant fireplace. And stairs. Can I go upstairs? Not yet, baby. Let me check things first. Jessica moved through the great room slowly, taking inventory. The furniture, when she pulled back the sheets, was high quality, leather couches, solid wood tables, everything built to last. The kitchen, visible through an archway, had vintage appliances from the 70s but looked functional. Copper pots hung from a rack above an island workspace. She found the generator in a utility room off the kitchen. It was industrial-sized, covered in dust, with a note taped to it in faded handwriting. Check fuel and oil before starting. Capacity, 500 gallons. External tank in shed. Instructions and binder on shelf. Jessica located the binder and flipped through it. Detailed instructions for starting the generator, maintaining the water system, operating the wood stove, even troubleshooting common problems. Someone, probably Victor Brennan himself, had created a comprehensive manual for survival in this place. Upstairs, she found 6 bedrooms, each one spacious with its own character. The master bedroom took up the entire south end of the 3rd floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering that impossible mountain view. Emma claimed a smaller room on the 2nd floor, one with built-in bookshelves and a window seat perfect for reading. "This is my room, Mama. This one's mine." Jessica smiled despite her exhaustion and anxiety. "Then it's yours, baby." They spent the next hour unloading the car, carrying all the supplies Tom had given them into the lodge. By the time they finished, twilight had settled over the mountains and the temperature was dropping fast. Jessica could see her breath even inside the lodge. She needed to get that generator running, needed heat and light before full darkness came. The shed behind the lodge was half buried in snow, but the door opened to reveal exactly what the manual had promised: a massive fuel tank, 3/4 full according to the gauge. Jessica followed the instructions carefully, checking connections, priming the fuel line, flipping switches in the sequence the manual specified. When she finally pressed the starter button, nothing happened. She tried again. Nothing. Panic started to creep in. Without the generator, they had no heat except the fireplace. No lights except flashlights. No way to heat water or cook food beyond the camp stove. "Come on," she whispered, pressing the starter again. "Please, please work." On the 4th try, the generator coughed, sputtered, and roared to life with a sound like thunder. Lights flickered on in the lodge windows. Jessica could have cried with relief. Back inside, warmth was already starting to seep into the space from baseboard heaters that clicked and hummed as they came online. Emma had found a stack of books on one of the shelves and was examining them by flashlight. "Mama, look, there's so many stories." Jessica pulled her daughter close and felt, for the first time in weeks, something that might have been hope. They made it. Against all odds, they'd actually made it. They were here, in this impossible lodge, with heat and shelter and a chance to catch their breath. "We did it, baby," she whispered into Emma's hair. "We actually did it." That night, Jessica built a fire in the massive stone fireplace. It took 3 tries and most of a bundle of kindling, but eventually the flames caught and spread, filling the great room with dancing light and blessed warmth. They ate freeze-dried meals heated on the camp stove, drank hot chocolate made with water from the tap that ran clear and cold from the well, and curled up together on one of the leather couches under every blanket they brought. Emma fell asleep within minutes, exhausted from the day's adventure. Jessica stayed awake, watching the firelight play across the ceiling beams, listening to the wind howl outside, thinking about everything that had led them here. She'd gambled everything, literally everything, on this place, on a property she'd never seen, in a location that might as well have been another planet for how isolated it was. And somehow, impossibly, it had worked. At least for now. Tomorrow she'd explore more thoroughly. Tomorrow she'd make lists of what needed fixing, what needed cleaning, what needed to be done to make this place truly livable. Tomorrow she'd start planning how to survive here long-term. But tonight, with her daughter sleeping peacefully beside her and a roof over their heads that nobody could take away, Jessica let herself simply breathe. They were safe. They were warm. They were home. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. Jessica woke to a world transformed. Sometime during the night, while she and Emma had slept, the storm Tom had warned about had arrived. Snow pressed against the windows in drifts that reached halfway up the glass. The wind had died down, leaving an eerie silence broken only by the occasional creak of the lodge settling and the distant crack of tree branches giving way under the weight of ice. She checked her phone out of habit. No signal, as expected. The date glowed back at her, December 20th. They'd been here less than 24 hours, and already the world outside might as well have ceased to exist. Emma stirred beside her, then sat up with a gasp. "Mama, look at all the snow." The view through the great room's massive windows was breathtaking. The storm had buried everything in white. The deck, the trees, even the air itself seemed thick with snow still falling in fat, lazy flakes. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "We're snowed in, aren't we?" Emma asked, but she didn't sound scared. She sounded excited, like this was the greatest adventure of her life. "Yeah, baby, we're snowed in. Like pioneers, like the people in the books at school who had to survive the winter in log cabins." Jessica managed to smile. Exactly like that. After breakfast, oatmeal cooked on the camp stove with powdered milk and honey they'd found in one of the kitchen cabinets, Jessica decided to do a proper exploration of the lodge. If they were going to be here for weeks, possibly months, she needed to understand every inch of this place. The main floor was more extensive than she'd realized last night. Beyond the great room and kitchen, she found a formal dining room with a table that could seat 16, a study with built-in bookshelves and a massive oak desk, and a sunroom at the back that would offer spectacular views once she cleared the snow from the windows. The study caught her attention. Unlike the other rooms, which had a lived-in feeling despite years of abandonment, the study felt deliberately preserved. Papers sat in neat stacks on the desk. Books lined the shelves in what appeared to be careful organization. A safe, medium-sized and built into the wall, sat behind a hinge panel Jessica discovered by accident when she leaned against what looked like solid shelving. She tried the safe's handle. Locked, of course. The combination dial stared back at her, mysterious and challenging. "What's that, Mama?" Emma had followed her into the study, buttons tucked under one arm. "It's a safe. A place people keep valuable things." "What kind of valuable things?" "I don't know, baby. We need the combination to open it." Jessica made a mental note to search for any paperwork that might include the safe combination, then continued her exploration. She'd come back to this mystery later. The second floor held the 6 bedrooms she discovered yesterday, plus 3 full bathrooms that would need extensive cleaning but appeared functional. Each bedroom had its own personality, one decorated in nautical themes, another with mountain landscapes, a third that appeared to have been a child's room at some point, with faded wallpaper showing bears and pine trees. But it was the third floor, the master suite, that occupied the entire top level, where Jessica found something that made her stop and stare. The bedroom itself was magnificent. King-size bed with a hand-carved headboard, more of those floor-to-ceiling windows offering impossible views, a fireplace built into the interior wall. But what caught her attention was the door at the far end of the room. Unlike every other door in the lodge, which was solid wood, this one was reinforced with metal plating. It had 3 separate locks and a small plaque screwed into the wood. "Private. VB. Only. VB Victor Brennan." Jessica tried the door. Locked, all 3 mechanisms engaged. She checked her key ring, but none of the keys she'd been given looked right for these locks. Whatever was behind that door, Victor Brennan had wanted it to stay private. Her curiosity burned, but without the right keys, she'd have to force the door, and something about that felt wrong. This was someone's private space, someone's sanctuary. She couldn't just break in, even if that someone had been dead for over 40 years. Emma called from downstairs, something about finding a box of old toys, and Jessica went to investigate. The toy box was in what must have been Victor's office, a smaller room off the study, with filing cabinets and more bookshelves and a comfortable reading chair by the window. While Emma sorted through vintage toys, wooden blocks, tin cars, a doll with a porcelain face, Jessica examined the filing cabinets. Most were unlocked, filled with decades-old business records and correspondence. Victor Brennan's life in paper form. Contracts, letters, tax documents, all the bureaucratic evidence that someone had existed, had built something, had mattered. One drawer, the bottom one in the largest cabinet, was locked with a small padlock. Jessica rattled it experimentally. Something inside shifted with a heavy sound, like books or thick folders. She searched the office methodically, opening drawers and checking behind books. In the reading chair's side table, she found a small key taped to the underside of the drawer. It fit the padlock perfectly. Inside the locked drawer were 3 leather-bound journals and a sealed envelope with "To whom it may concern" written across the front in elegant cursive. Jessica's heart rate picked up. She pulled out the envelope and journals, carried them to the desk, and sat down. Emma was still happily occupied with the toys, creating an elaborate city on the floor. Outside, snow continued falling, thickening the barrier between the lodge and the rest of the world. Jessica opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a letter. The paper yellowed with age, but the ink still dark and legible. "To whom it may concern," it began. "If you're reading this, I am long dead, and someone has finally purchased this property. I hope that person is someone who needs it, someone who will understand what I try to build here, and what I've left behind. My name is Victor Brennan. I built the Summit Lodge in 1968 with money I made in timber and real estate. I came here to escape the noise of the world, to find peace in these mountains. I found that peace, but I also found something else. Something I spent the last 15 years of my life protecting. In the mountains surrounding this property, there are old mines. Most people know about the silver mines that operated in the 1880s and played out by 1900. What people don't know is that those miners found something else, something they were too afraid to touch, too superstitious to exploit. I'm not a superstitious man. I'm a practical man. So when I bought the mineral rights to this entire ridge in 1970, I commissioned a proper geological survey. What they found changed everything. There's gold in these mountains. Not just trace amounts or hopeful veins that might pan out. Real gold. Substantial deposits that the old-timers either missed or deliberately ignored because of the legends that surrounded them. I spent years quietly extracting what I could, selling it through channels that wouldn't attract attention, building wealth beyond what I'd already accumulated through legitimate business. I kept it secret because I didn't want the chaos that a gold rush would bring. I didn't want my sanctuary destroyed by fortune hunters and mining companies. When I realized my heart was failing, I made arrangements. I sealed the mine entrances. I stored what I'd extracted in a secure location on this property. And I wrote this letter, hoping someone would find it someday. If you're reading this, you own the land and everything on it. The gold I extracted is yours. The mines themselves, if you choose to reopen them, are yours. But I leave you with a warning: gold changes people. It attracts attention, greed, violence. Guard this secret carefully. Use the wealth wisely. Don't let it destroy you the way I've seen it destroy so many others. The combination to the master bedroom vault is the date this lodge was completed, November 15th, 68. Inside, you'll find directions to where I've stored everything I extracted. Current value, by my last estimate in 1982, is approximately $40 million. With 43 years of appreciation and market changes, I imagine it's worth considerably more now. Whoever you are, whatever brought you to this remote place, I hope you find what you need here. I hope you use this gift to build something good, something that matters. The mountains keep their secrets well. They kept mine for 40 years. Now the secret is yours. Victor Brennan, October 12th, 1982. Jessica read the letter 3 times, her hands shaking so badly the paper rustled. $40 million in 1982. She didn't even know how to calculate what that would be worth now. 50 million? 70? More? This couldn't be real. People didn't just stumble onto gold fortunes in abandoned lodges. This was the kind of thing that happened in movies and fairy tales, not to broke single mothers who'd spent their last dollars on a desperate gamble. But the letter was real. The careful handwriting, the specific details, the precise combination for a vault she'd seen with her own eyes upstairs. "Mama, look what I made." Emma held up an elaborate structure built from wooden blocks. "It's our lodge." Jessica forced herself to smile, to focus on her daughter. "That's beautiful, baby. You're so creative. Can we explore more? Can we go see all the rooms again?" "In a little while, sweetie. Mama needs to check something upstairs first." Jessica climbed the stairs to the third floor with the letter clutched in her hand. The master bedroom felt different now, charged with possibility. She approached the reinforced door with its 3 locks and its private warning plaque. She tried the combination Victor had provided. November 15th, 68. Nothing happened. She tried again, more carefully this time, making sure each number clicked precisely into place. Still nothing. Frustration and confusion warred in her chest. Had the letter been some kind of elaborate joke? A fantasy Victor Brennan had written to entertain himself in his final days? Then she noticed something. The combination dial she'd been trying was for the middle lock. There were 2 others, one above, one below. Jessica examined them more carefully. They weren't additional security. They were different types of locks entirely. The top one was a key lock. The bottom one appeared to require some kind of card or flat object to slide into a slot. She went back to the office and searched more carefully. In the reading chair's other side table, she found a small brass key and what looked like an old credit card made of metal instead of plastic. Both had tiny engravings. MBV. Master Bedroom Vault. Back upstairs, she tried the sequence. Key in the top lock, combination in the middle lock, metal card in the bottom slot. She turned all 3 mechanisms simultaneously. The door unsealed with a soft hiss, as if it had been airtight. Cool air rushed out, carrying the scent of metal and old paper. Jessica pulled the door open slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. The room beyond was smaller than she'd expected, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet. But what it contained made her knees weak. One wall was lined with filing cabinets. Another had shelves holding what looked like geological samples and mining equipment. The third wall held a massive gun safe, the kind banks use for safety deposit boxes. And in the center of the room, on a heavy wooden table, sat 3 detailed maps marked with red X's and careful notations in Victor's handwriting. Jessica approached the maps slowly, almost reverently. They showed the mountains surrounding the lodge, with specific locations marked. Mine entrance number 1, sealed 1980. Mine entrance number 2, sealed 1981. Primary storage. Coordinates 39.7421 degrees north, 105.8819 degrees west. She pulled out her phone and typed the coordinates into her Maps app, not expecting it to work without cell service. But the GPS coordinates loaded from cache data, showing a location about half a mile north of the lodge, deep in the forest. Half a mile. The treasure, if it was real, if any of this was real, was half a mile away. Jessica turned to the gun safe. It had a combination dial and a key lock. She tried the combination from the letter, November 15th, 68, and heard mechanisms click. The key from the office fit the lock. The safe door swung open with surprising ease for something that must have weighed 200 pounds. Inside were stacks of leather-bound ledgers, plastic cases holding what looked like gold samples, and a metal box about the size of a briefcase. Jessica pulled out the metal box first. It was surprisingly heavy, maybe 40 pounds. She set it on the table and found it had a simple latch, no lock. Inside, nested in foam padding, were dozens of gold bars. Each one was about the size of a candy bar, stamped with numbers and symbols she didn't recognize. They gleamed in the dim light from the bedroom, impossibly bright, impossibly real. Jessica picked one up. It was dense, heavy, cold against her palm. She'd never held gold before, never been close enough to touch it. It felt different from what she'd expected. Not magical or special, just dense and valuable and profoundly strange. She set it down carefully and pulled out one of the ledgers. Victor's handwriting filled every page with meticulous detail. March 3rd, 1975, extracted 14.3 ounces from mine number 1. Purity 87%. Sold through Denver Contact for $2,180. Total extracted to date, 487 ounces. August 19th, 1978. Extracted 22.1 ounces from mine number 2. Purity 91%. Added to storage. Total extracted to date, 1,843 ounces. The entries went on for pages, years, documenting every extraction, every ounce, every transaction. Jessica flipped to the final entry, dated October 3rd, 1982. Final extraction complete. Total gold extracted and stored, 12,347 ounces. Estimated current value at $400 per oz, for $1,938,800. Personal note, my heart can't take the physical demands anymore. The mines are sealed. The gold is stored. My work here is done. Whoever finds this, I hope you understand what a gift this is. I hope you're worthy of it. Jessica did the math in her head, her thoughts racing. 12,000 ounces of gold. Current gold prices were around. What? She'd seen something on the news recently. $2,000 per ounce? Maybe more? 12,000 ounces times $2,000 per ounce. $24 million. The number was so large it lost meaning. It was monopoly money, fantasy numbers, the kind of wealth that existed in other people's lives, not hers. She sat down hard on the floor, the ledger still in her hands. Emma was downstairs playing with toys, oblivious to what her mother had just discovered. Outside, the storm continued, burying them deeper in snow, cutting them off from civilization. And here in this hidden vault, in this impossible lodge she'd bought for $800, was enough gold to change their lives forever. Jessica's hands trembled as she continued examining the vault's contents. The other ledgers contained geological surveys, assay reports from the samples Victor had extracted, and correspondence with buyers, all dated before 1982, all carefully preserved. One folder caught her attention. It was marked Legal Documents, Mineral Rights. Inside, she found deeds and contracts showing that Victor Brennan had purchased the mineral rights to over 5,000 acres of mountain land surrounding the lodge. The documents were properly recorded, notarized, legitimate, which meant whoever owned the lodge owned those mineral rights, which meant Jessica owned them. She owned the land, the mines, everything beneath the surface. A sound from downstairs made her freeze. Emma, calling her name with a question about lunch. Jessica realized she'd been in the vault for over an hour, lost in documents and impossible discoveries. Coming, baby. She carefully returned everything to the safe except for one ledger, which she brought with her. She locked the vault door with all three mechanisms, pocketed the keys and metal card, and went downstairs trying to look normal, trying to act like she hadn't just discovered $24 million worth of gold sitting in the forest half a mile away. Emma wanted mac and cheese from their supplies. Jessica heated water on the camp stove and cooked, moving on autopilot while her mind raced. She needed to think, needed to plan, needed to figure out what to do with this information. The storm outside showed no signs of stopping. If anything, it had intensified, the snow falling so thick she could barely see the tree line. They were trapped here for days, maybe weeks, which meant she had time. Time to read through all of Victor's documents. Time to understand what she'd inherited. Time to decide what to do next. After lunch, while Emma napped on the couch by the fire, Jessica spread Victor's maps across the dining room table. The level of detail was extraordinary. He marked not just the mine entrances, but also the primary storage location, backup storage, the best routes to reach each site, and even seasonal considerations for access. The primary storage site, the one marked with coordinates, was described in Victor's notes as natural cave formation, enlarged and reinforced, waterproof and temperature stable, accessible year-round with proper equipment. Half a mile north through dense forest in the middle of a blizzard. Jessica wasn't stupid enough to try reaching it now. But once the storm cleared, once she could safely navigate the terrain, she needed to see it with her own eyes. Needed to confirm this wasn't some elaborate fantasy or con. She spent the afternoon reading through Victor's journals, the personal ones she'd found in the locked drawer. They told the story of a man who'd built an empire through hard work and smart investments, then walked away from it all to live in the mountains. A man who'd never married, never had children, who'd found his purpose in solitude and the slow, methodical extraction of gold from ancient veins. I don't miss the city, he'd written in 1976. I don't miss the noise, the politics, the constant pressure to be more, have more, want more. Here, I have everything I need. The mountains, the silence, the satisfaction of honest physical labor. The gold is a bonus, a hedge against future needs. But it's not why I'm here. I'm here because anywhere else, I was slowly dying. Jessica understood that feeling. In her tiny studio apartment, counting pennies and watching her daughter go without, she'd been dying too. Not physically, but spiritually. The slow erosion of hope, the constant anxiety, the grinding knowledge that no matter how hard she worked, it was never enough. This lodge, this impossible place, had given her back something she'd lost. Even before the discovery of the gold, just having a home, having space and shelter and the freedom from immediate crisis had given her room to breathe. The gold was just confirmation that sometimes, impossibly, the universe rewarded desperation with grace. As evening approached, Jessica made another discovery. In the study, behind a false panel in one of the bookshelves, she found a sophisticated radio setup. Not the hand-crank emergency radio Tom had given her, but a powerful transceiver with an external antenna she could see running up to the roof. The power was still on from the generator. Jessica flipped the radio's power switch, and after a moment, it hummed to life. She adjusted the frequency dial experimentally and suddenly heard voices, faint and crackling, but human voices. Storm expected to continue through tomorrow morning. Accumulations of 3 to 4 feet across the ridge. All mountain roads remain closed. White Pine Ridge is completely cut off until plows can get through, estimated December 23rd at the earliest. December 23rd, 3 days away. They'd be isolated here for at least 3 more days, possibly longer. Jessica tried to feel concerned about that and found she couldn't. They had heat, food, water, shelter. They were safer here than they'd been anywhere else in months. The isolation that had scared off previous owners felt like protection now, like a moat around a castle. She continued exploring the radio's frequencies and found one that appeared to be for emergency communications. She keyed the microphone experimentally. "Hello, this is Jessica Torres at the Summit Lodge on White Pine Ridge. Testing to see if anyone can hear me. Static." Then, faintly, "Summit Lodge, this is White Pine Ridge Volunteer Fire Department. We read you. Are you in distress?" Jessica's heart jumped. Connection to the outside world, to help if she needed it. "No distress. Just wanted to establish contact. My daughter and I just moved into the lodge. We're snowed in, but we're safe." A pause. "You moved into the Summit Lodge? In December? Long story. But we're okay. We have heat and supplies. Good to know someone's finally up there. That place has been empty too long. If you need anything, call on this frequency. Channel 19. We monitor it 24/7 during winter. Thank you. I appreciate that." Jessica signed off and sat back, relieved. They weren't completely cut off, after all. If something went wrong, if Emma got sick or they ran into trouble, they had a way to call for help. That night, after Emma fell asleep, Jessica returned to the vault. She needed to see it again, to confirm it wasn't a dream brought on by desperation and exhaustion. The gold bars gleamed in the light from her flashlight. She counted them. 43 bars, each one marked with weight and purity. According to Victor's notes, each bar represented about 15 ounces of refined gold. 645 ounces just sitting in this box. At current market rates, that was roughly $1.3 million. And according to the maps and ledgers, this was just a sample. The bulk of what Victor had extracted was stored at the location marked on the maps, the cave formation half a mile north. Jessica sat on the floor of the vault, surrounded by evidence of Victor Brennan's secret life, and let herself feel the full weight of what she'd found. This wasn't just enough to survive. This was generational wealth. This was enough to give Emma every opportunity Jessica had never had. This was enough to help not just themselves, but others. People struggling the way they'd been struggling. People who needed hope and help and a chance to catch their breath. She thought about Tom at the hardware store, who'd given her supplies on credit because his sister had seen desperation in her eyes. She thought about Linda, the county clerk, who'd given her brother's card and a quiet warning. She thought about all the small kindnesses that had made this moment possible. If Victor's gold was real, when she confirmed it was real, she'd pay that forward. She'd make sure other desperate mothers got their miracles too. But first, she needed to verify, needed to see the main storage with her own eyes, needed to understand the full scope of what she'd inherited. The storm continued for 2 more days, just as the weather reports had predicted. Jessica and Emma settled into a routine that felt surprisingly normal. Mornings were for breakfast and exploring different parts of the lodge. Afternoons were for reading. Emma with her discovered books, Jessica with Victor's detailed journals and maps. Evenings were for dinner by the fire and stories before bed. Emma seemed happier than Jessica had seen her in years. She ran through the enormous house, playing elaborate games of pretend, turning the different rooms into kingdoms and castles and secret hideouts. She asked endless questions about Victor Brennan, about who he was and why he'd built such a magnificent home. Jessica answered as honestly as she could, without mentioning the gold. He was a man who loved the mountains. He wanted a place to be alone, to be peaceful. He built this lodge so he'd have somewhere safe and beautiful to live. Like us, Emma said. We needed somewhere safe too. Yeah, baby, just like us. On the morning of December 23rd, Jessica woke to silence. Not the muffled silence of falling snow, but the crystal-clear silence of a storm that had finally passed. She went to the window and caught her breath. The world outside was transformed. 3 feet of fresh snow covered everything, turning the landscape into something from a dream. The trees bowed under the weight of ice and powder. The mountains beyond stood sharp and clear against the sky, so blue it hurt to look at. And the sun. Jessica had forgotten how bright mountain sunshine could be, reflecting off all that white until the entire world seemed to glow. Mama, look. Emma pressed her face against the window. It's so sparkly. Everything's sparkly. That's the sun on the snow, baby. That's ice crystals catching the light. It's beautiful. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Jessica pulled her daughter close. Yeah, it really is. After breakfast, while Emma played in one of the upstairs bedrooms, Jessica pulled out the maps and GPS coordinates. 1/2 mile north. With the storm past and the sky clear, today was the day. She needed to see the storage site, needed to confirm that Victor Brennan's treasure was real. She bundled up in every layer she owned, strapped on the snowshoes Tom had included in their supplies, and told Emma she was going to explore the property. I'll be back in an hour, maybe 2. You stay inside where it's warm. If you need me, use the radio. Remember how I showed you? Emma nodded seriously. Channel 19. I remember. Good girl. I'll be back soon. The snowshoes made walking possible, but not easy. Jessica sank 6 inches with every step, had to lift each foot high to clear the snow. The forest was silent except for her breathing and the crunch of snow beneath her shoes. No birds, no animals, no sounds of human civilization. Just pristine wilderness stretching out in every direction. She used her phone's GPS to navigate, following the coordinates Victor had marked. The forest was dense with pine and aspen, the trees so heavy with snow they formed natural archways over her path. Twice she had to detour around fallen branches. Once she disturbed a drift that cascaded down from above, coating her in powder. 20 minutes of hard walking brought her to a rocky outcropping that rose from the forest floor like the spine of some buried giant. Jessica checked her coordinates. This was it, the location Victor had marked. She circled the outcropping slowly, looking for any sign of a cave entrance. For several minutes, she found nothing. Just rock and snow and more rock. Then she noticed something odd. A section of the outcropping where the snow had melted slightly, as if there was warmer air escaping from somewhere. She cleared snow away with her gloved hands and found it. A metal door set into the rock face, camouflaged to blend with the natural stone. It had a combination lock and a heavy handle. Jessica tried the combination from Victor's letter, November 15th, 68. The lock clicked. The handle turned. The door swung outward with a groan of metal hinges that hadn't moved in decades. Cold air rushed out, but not the freezing air of the forest. Cave air, stable, slightly warmer than the outside, smelling of stone and earth and something metallic. Jessica pulled out her flashlight and stepped inside. The cave entrance was narrow, barely wide enough for one person to move through comfortably. But after 10 feet, it opened into a larger space. Jessica swept her flashlight beam around and felt her breath catch. The cave was enormous, at least 40 feet across, with a ceiling that disappeared in a shadow above. And it wasn't natural. Someone, presumably Victor and whoever he'd hired to help, had reinforced the walls with timber bracing and concrete. They'd installed wooden platforms to keep things off the cave floor. They'd created a dry, stable environment that could preserve its contents indefinitely. And those contents made Jessica's knees weak. Stacked on the platforms were metal cases. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, each one about the size of a large toolbox. Each one carefully labeled with dates and weights in Victor's precise handwriting. Jessica approached the nearest case and opened it. Inside, nested in foam padding, were more gold bars, larger than the ones in the lodge vault, each one stamped with purity marks and serial numbers. She opened another case. More gold, plus rough nuggets and gold dust in sealed containers. She opened a third case and found documentation, more ledgers, more assay reports, more evidence of Victor's methodical extraction and storage operation. Jessica moved through the cave systematically, checking cases at random, trying to get a sense of the scope. Every case she opened contained gold in some form. Refined bars, raw nuggets, bags of high grade, or waiting to be processed. At the back of the cave, she found something else. Geological maps showing the mine networks, with annotations about remaining veins and estimated reserves. Victor hadn't just extracted gold. He'd mapped every deposit he'd found, calculated how much was still there, left a complete guide for anyone who wanted to continue the work. Jessica's hands shook as she photographed everything with her phone. The cases, the gold, the documentation. Evidence that this was real, that she wasn't hallucinating or being conned by some elaborate hoax. She spent an hour in the cave, doing rough counts and calculations. Based on Victor's labeling system and the number of cases, she estimated somewhere between 10,000 and 12,000 ounces of gold. At current market prices, around $2,000 per ounce, that was $20 to $24 million. Exactly what Victor had estimated in his letter, adjusted for 43 years of appreciation. Jessica sat down on one of the wooden platforms, surrounded by a fortune in gold, and finally let herself believe it. This was real. All of it was real. She bought an $800 lodge and inherited $24 million in gold. She'd gambled everything on a desperate hope, and won so completely it didn't seem possible. But it was possible. It was real. It was hers. She thought about Emma, waiting back at the lodge. Thought about the life they'd left behind, evictions and empty cupboards and constant fear. Thought about the life they could have now, security, opportunity, freedom. No more counting pennies. No more going without. No more lying awake at night terrified of the next crisis. They were safe. They were home. And they had wealth beyond anything Jessica had ever imagined. She stood up slowly, her legs stiff from the cold and the long walk. She needed to get back to Emma. Needed to think about next steps, about how to handle this discovery, about what came next. But first, she needed to see her daughter's face when she told her everything was going to be okay. Really, truly okay. Not just for now, but forever. Jessica secured the cave door behind her, made sure the lock engaged, and started the trek back through the snow. The sun was high now, warming the air, just enough that the cold felt invigorating instead of threatening. Her snowshoe tracks from earlier made the return journey easier. She was halfway back to the lodge when she heard something that made her freeze. An engine. Distant but distinct. Growing louder. Someone was coming up the access road. Jessica's heart rate spiked. The road had been impassable for days. The county had said they wouldn't plow until the 23rd at the earliest. Who could possibly be coming here? She moved faster, pushing through the snow with urgent purpose. She needed to get back to Emma. Needed to make sure her daughter was safe. The lodge came into view through the trees, and Jessica saw it. A large black pickup truck with oversized tires and a snowplow attachment parked in front of the building. Two men stood on the deck, trying the front door. One of them turned as Jessica emerged from the tree line, and even from 50 yards away, she could read the expression on his face. Surprise. Calculation. Interest. "Hello there," he called out, his voice carrying across the snow. "Didn't expect to find anyone here. We're from the county assessor's office, coming to inspect the property. Heard someone bought it at auction, but figured they'd wait until spring to take possession." Jessica's instincts screamed warning. Something about this didn't feel right. The county wouldn't send assessors during a blizzard. They wouldn't need to inspect a property that had just been sold. She kept walking toward them, but her hand moved to her pocket where she'd stored her phone. Channel 19. The volunteer fire department. Help was just a radio call away if she needed it. "I'm Jessica Torres. I own this property." She kept her voice steady, confident. "What exactly are you assessing?" The first man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Standard post-sale inspection. Making sure everything's up to code, checking for hazards. Won't take long." The second man, younger and broader, said nothing. He just watched Jessica with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "I don't recall any inspection being mentioned in my paperwork," Jessica said, stopping at the bottom of the deck stairs. "Close enough to talk, far enough to run, if necessary." The first man's smile tightened. "It's standard procedure. Now, if you'll just let us inside." "No." Jessica's voice was firm. "Not without proper documentation and advance notice. You can contact me through official channels to schedule an inspection during normal business hours." The two men exchanged a look. Then the first one's smile vanished entirely. "Ms. Torres," he said, his voice dropping the pretense of friendliness. "I don't think you understand the situation. This property has some interesting history. Victor Brennan's mineral rights, for instance. Very valuable mineral rights. And we have reason to believe there might be hazardous materials stored here that need to be investigated." Jessica's blood ran cold. They knew. Somehow, they knew about the gold. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said carefully. "And I'm going to have to ask you to leave my property." The second man moved toward her, and Jessica's hand closed around her phone in her pocket. But before she could pull it out, another voice cut through the tension. "Is there a problem here?" All three of them turned. A third vehicle, a white pickup with White Pine Ridge Volunteer Fire Department on the side, had pulled up behind the black truck. A man in his 50s with a grizzled beard and a volunteer firefighter jacket climbed out. "Tom called us on the radio," he said, walking toward them with deliberate casualness. "Said he wanted us to check on the new folks at the Summit Lodge. Make sure they made it through the storm okay." Jessica could have kissed him. "We're fine, but these gentlemen were just leaving." The fire department volunteer looked at the two men with an expression that suggested he knew exactly what kind of assessment they'd been planning. "County assessor's office, huh? Funny, I know most of the county staff, and I don't recognize either of you fellas." The first man's jaw tightened. "This is official county business. Then you won't mind showing me your credentials and your authorization for being on private property during a weekend." The volunteer crossed his arms. "I'll wait." The two men clearly hadn't expected resistance. After a tense moment, the first one gestured to his partner. "Let's go. We'll be back through proper channels." They climbed into their truck and drove away, the engine noise fading back down the mountain. Jessica watched until they were completely out of sight, her heart hammering. The fire department volunteer turned to her. "You okay?" "Yeah. Thank you for coming. Tom's a good man. When he heard someone had bought this place, he asked us to keep an eye out. Good thing he did." He extended a hand. "I'm Robert Chun. I live about 5 miles down the valley." Jessica shook his hand gratefully. "Jessica Torres. My daughter Emma's inside. Those men, they weren't from the county. I'd bet money they were treasure hunters. This property's had rumors swirling around it for decades. Stories about Victor Brennan finding gold up here. Most people think it's just legend, but some folks take those stories seriously enough to try breaking in. Has there been trouble before? Few times over the years. Usually in summer when the roads are passable. This is the first time I've heard of anyone trying during winter." He looked at her seriously. "You need to be careful. If people think there's something valuable up here, they'll keep coming back." Jessica nodded, her mind racing. She needed to secure this property better. Needed to figure out how to protect what she'd found without advertising its existence. I appreciate the warning and the help. You need anything, supplies, assistance, someone to check on you. You call on Channel 19. The volunteer department monitors it constantly. We take care of our own up here, and you're one of us now. After Robert left, Jessica went inside and found Emma exactly where she'd left her, playing with toys in the great room. She hadn't even noticed the visitors. Jessica locked the door behind her, checked all the windows, and then sat down on the couch, adrenaline slowly draining from her system. She'd found $24 million in gold, and already people were coming after it. Victor Brennan had warned her in his letter, gold changes people. It attracts attention, greed, violence. Jessica looked at Emma, still innocent and happy, playing in the safety of their lodge. She'd wanted security for her daughter. She'd wanted a home, a future. But the gold came with danger she hadn't anticipated. Treasure hunters, thieves, people who would do anything to get their hands on Victor's fortune. Jessica pulled out Victor's journals and started reading more carefully, looking for guidance. Looking for whatever wisdom the old man had left behind about protecting the secret. Because now that she'd found it, she had to keep it. Not just for herself and Emma, but because losing it would mean going back to that desperate, dangerous life they'd escaped. And Jessica Torres had fought too hard to let anyone take this away from her. Whatever came next, whoever came next, they'd have to get through her first. The treasure was real. The danger was real. And Jessica was going to have to be smarter, stronger, and more determined than she'd ever been to protect both. Jessica spent that night sitting in Victor Brennan's study with every light on, his journals spread across the desk, Emma sleeping soundly in her claimed bedroom upstairs. The visit from the fake assessors had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. They'd known. Somehow, they'd known about the gold, about Victor's secret, about what this property really contained. She needed help. Real help. Professional help from people she could trust. But who could she trust with a secret worth $24 million? Who wouldn't try to take it from her, claim it belonged to the state or the federal government or some long-lost Brennan relative who'd magically appear the moment the gold became public knowledge? Jessica pulled out her phone and scrolled through her limited contacts. Tom from the hardware store. He'd been kind, but she barely knew him. Robert from the volunteer fire department. Same situation. Linda, the county clerk, had been helpful, but she worked for the government, and Jessica had no idea what legal complications might arise if county officials knew about the gold. Then she remembered something. In Victor's correspondence files, she'd seen letters from a law firm in Denver. Holloway and Associates. They'd handled Victor's estate after his death, managed the property transition, dealt with the tax foreclosure. If anyone understood the legal history of this property, it would be them. Jessica checked the time. 11:47 p.m. Too late to call now. But first thing in the morning, she'd reach out. She'd need a lawyer anyway, someone who could verify her ownership rights, protect her interests, and help her navigate whatever legal maze came with discovering a hidden fortune. She also needed to secure the property better. The lodge had good locks, but the cave entrance was exposed, vulnerable. Anyone with Victor's maps, and clearly someone out there had information about his operation, could find it. Jessica spent the next hour sketching out a plan. Tomorrow she'd call the law firm. She'd also call a security company, get quotes for a proper system with cameras and alarms. She'd reinforce the cave entrance, maybe install a better lock, something that couldn't be picked or forced. She'd inventory every single gold bar, document everything photographically, create records that would prove ownership if questions arose. But most importantly, she'd figure out how to convert at least some of the gold into usable money without attracting attention. Because $24 million in bars sitting in a cave wasn't security, it was just heavy metal. She needed cash, liquid assets, the kind of money that could pay for security and lawyers and everything else required to protect what she'd found. Victor's journals provided some guidance. He'd sold gold through private dealers, people who asked fewer questions and didn't report transactions to federal authorities. The contacts he'd used were 43 years old now, probably long dead or retired, but the principle remained sound. Somewhere in Denver or Colorado Springs, or even online, there were dealers who would buy gold with minimal paperwork. Jessica made notes until after midnight, planning and strategizing until her eyes burned with exhaustion. Finally, she allowed herself to sleep, curled up on the couch in the study with a fireplace poker within arm's reach. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing if the treasure hunters came back. Morning brought clear skies and bitter cold. Jessica woke to Emma's voice calling from the kitchen, asking if they had any pancake mix. They didn't, but Jessica improvised with flour and powdered milk and a little creativity, producing something that approximated pancakes and made Emma's face light up with delight. "These are so good, Mama. You're the best cook." Jessica smiled, feeling the familiar ache in her chest. Emma's standards have been lowered by years of struggle, to the point where mediocre pancakes qualified as the best. That was going to change. Everything was going to change. After breakfast, Jessica tried the lodge's landline, a vintage rotary phone in the study that she'd assumed was disconnected. To her surprise, it worked. The dial tone hummed steady and clear. Victor had kept the phone service active, probably through some automatic billing arrangement that had continued for 43 years after his death. She dialed the number for Holloway and Associates from the letterhead in Victor's files. After 4 rings, a receptionist answered with professional efficiency. "Holloway and Associates. How may I direct your call? I need to speak with someone about the Victor Brennan estate. The Summit Lodge property in White Pine Ridge." A pause. "The Brennan estate was settled decades ago, ma'am. I'm not sure. I just purchased the property at county auction. There are some complications that have arisen, and I need legal counsel familiar with the estate's history." Another pause, longer this time. "Please hold." Classical music played for nearly 3 minutes before a new voice came on the line. Male, older, with the careful diction of someone who'd spent a lifetime in courtrooms. "This is Marcus Holloway. I handled Victor Brennan's estate personally back in 1982. You said you purchased the Summit Lodge." "Yes, sir." "Jessica Torres. I bought it on December 19th for $800 at county auction." $800. Marcus sounded amazed. "For that entire property? The county must have been desperate to move it. It's been empty for 6 years. Nobody wanted it because of the location and condition. Smart people. That place is a logistical nightmare. But it's also," he stopped himself. "Miss Torres, why exactly are you calling? What complications have arisen?" Jessica took a breath. This was the moment. She either trusted this man or she didn't. "I found something Victor Brennan left behind. Something valuable. And I need legal help protecting it." Silence on the other end. So complete Jessica thought the connection had dropped. Then Marcus spoke, his voice carefully neutral. "Miss Torres, I'm going to need you to be more specific. What exactly did you find?" "Gold. $24 million worth of gold that Victor extracted from mines on the property. He left documentation, maps, everything. And yesterday, 2 men showed up claiming to be county assessors, asking questions about mineral rights and hazardous materials. They weren't from the county. I think they were treasure hunters." More silence. Then, "Miss Torres, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Do not discuss this with anyone else. Do not touch or move any of what you found. Do not let anyone onto that property for any reason. I'm going to drive up there today. We need to talk in person, and we need to secure everything immediately. Can you do that? Can you keep quiet and stay safe until I arrive?" "Yes." "How long will it take you to get here?" "I'm in Denver. If the roads are clear, about 3 hours. I'll call you when I'm close." He paused. "Ms. Torres, Victor was a client of mine for 15 years. He was also my friend. If what you're saying is true, if you actually found his cash, then you're sitting on something that people have been searching for since he died. You're in real danger. You understand that?" "I'm starting to." "Good. Lock your doors. Don't answer for anyone but me. I'll be there as soon as I can." The wait was agonizing. Jessica kept Emma occupied with games and books, all while listening for the sound of approaching vehicles. She checked the windows every 15 minutes. She kept the fireplace poker close. She tried not to let her anxiety show, but Emma picked up on it anyway. "Mama, are you scared?" Jessica knelt down and pulled her daughter close. "A little bit, baby, but everything's going to be okay. A lawyer is coming to help us. He's going to make sure we're safe." Because of the gold? Jessica's heart skipped. What do you know about gold? I found this in the study yesterday. Emma pulled out one of Victor's journals from behind the couch cushions. I can't read all the words, but there's pictures of gold nuggets and maps. Is this our gold now? Jessica took the journal carefully. She should have been more careful, should have locked everything away. But Emma was 6 years old, curious, clever, and too smart to be protected by lies. Yes, baby, it's our gold now. Victor, the man who built this house, he found gold in the mountains. He left it for whoever bought the lodge. That's us. Are we rich? Yes, we're rich. But Emma, this is really important. We can't tell anyone about this. Not yet. Not until the lawyer helps us figure everything out. People might try to take it away from us if they know. Emma's eyes went wide. Like bad guys in movies? Sort of like that. So this is our secret, okay? Just you and me and the lawyer. I'm really good at keeping secrets, Emma promised solemnly. Marcus Holloway arrived at 2:47 p.m. in a silver Mercedes SUV that looked distinctly out of place against the snow-covered wilderness. He was in his 70s, Jessica guessed, with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that assessed everything with practiced efficiency. He wore an expensive suit under a wool overcoat and carried a leather briefcase that probably cost more than Jessica's entire wardrobe. But his handshake was warm, his smile genuine, and the way he looked at the lodge suggested real affection for the place and its history. I haven't been here since 1983, he said, standing in the great room and looking up at the cathedral ceiling. Victor invited me up once before he died. Wanted to update his will. This place looks exactly the same. You knew him well as anyone did, which isn't saying much. Victor was intensely private, but he trusted me with his legal affairs, and I'd like to think we were friends in addition to being attorney and client. He set his briefcase on the dining table. Now, show me what you found. Jessica took him through everything. The study safe with its instructions and letter. The master bedroom vault with its samples and ledgers. The maps leading to the cave. And finally, bundled in her heaviest coat and snowshoes, she led him on the half-mile trek through the forest to the cave entrance. Marcus's reaction to the gold was remarkably restrained. He examined several bars carefully, checked the documentation, photographed everything with a professional camera he'd brought, and took copious notes. His face remained impassive throughout, but Jessica could see the slight tremor in his hands when he picked up one of the larger gold bars. Victor actually did it, Marcus said quietly. He told me once, back in 1981, that he'd found gold up here. Said he was extracting it slowly, carefully building a reserve. I thought he was exaggerating. Thought maybe he'd found a few ounces, enough to supplement his income. But this, he gestured at the hundreds of cases. This is extraordinary. Is it really worth $24 million? Marcus did calculations on his phone, checking current gold prices. Conservative estimate, assuming the purity Victor recorded is accurate, you're looking at somewhere between $22 and $26 million, depending on market conditions and who you sell to. That's just the extracted gold. If the mines Victor mapped still have viable deposits, the total value could be substantially higher. Jessica felt dizzy. Hearing the numbers from a lawyer made them real in a way they hadn't been before. What happens now? Legally, I mean. Can someone take this away from me? Let's discuss that back at the lodge where it's warm. Back at the lodge, with Emma playing upstairs and a fire crackling in the great room, Marcus laid out the legal landscape. First, the good news. You purchased this property at a legitimate county auction. The deed is clear, properly recorded. Victor's estate was settled in 1982, and no heirs were found despite an extensive search. The property eventually went to tax foreclosure after years of unpaid taxes. Everything here, the land, the buildings, and, crucially, the mineral rights belongs to you free and clear. So the gold is mine? Legally, yes. Victor extracted it from his own property using his own mineral rights. He never sold it, never transferred ownership. When he died intestate with no heirs, everything should have been liquidated as part of the estate. But this gold was hidden, unknown to the court and the estate administrators. In legal terms, it's found property, which belongs to the landowner, you. Jessica felt relief flood through her. So nobody can take it? I said legally yours. Practically, it's more complicated. Marcus pulled out a legal pad and started sketching. The federal government could claim mineral rights under various laws if you tried to reopen the mines for new extraction. But Victor's gold was already extracted before his death. It's not ore in the ground. It's refined metal in storage. That's personal property, not mineral reserves. What about taxes? That's the challenging part. When you eventually sell or use this gold, you'll owe capital gains taxes on the appreciated value. But the baseline value would be calculated from when you acquired it, essentially when you purchased the property. Since you had no knowledge of the gold at purchase, the IRS could argue the entire current value is taxable gain. We'll need to structure this carefully to minimize tax liability. How much tax are we talking about? Marcus did more calculations. Worst case scenario, if you liquidate everything at once, you could owe $8 to $10 million in combined federal and state taxes. But if we're strategic, selling small amounts over time, using trusts and proper estate planning, we can substantially reduce that burden. Jessica's head spun with numbers. Even after taxes, she'd have somewhere between $14 and $18 million. More money than she could process. More money than she'd make in 10 lifetimes working normal jobs. There's another concern, Marcus continued. Those men who came here yesterday. If they know about the gold, others might too. Victor kept his operation secret, but he had to sell the gold through dealers, process it somehow. Someone, somewhere, might have records or knowledge about what he was doing up here. What do we do about that? We secure everything. We document everything. We make sure that if anyone challenges your ownership, we can prove beyond doubt that this gold came from Victor's legal mining operation on property you now own. He pulled documents from his briefcase. I brought the original estate files. Victor's will, such as it was. His business records. Everything I had in storage. We're going to cross-reference all of it with what you found. They spent the next 3 hours going through paperwork. Victor's meticulous records matched Marcus's estate files perfectly. The timeline, the methods, the buyers he'd used, everything documented and verified. It painted a picture of a careful, methodical man who'd known exactly what he was doing and had left a paper trail that would stand up in any court. Victor was smart. Marcus said, organizing documents into neat stacks. He didn't just hide the gold. He created a legal framework to protect whoever found it. These records prove legitimate extraction, proper mining procedures, legal sale of some quantities to establish provenance. If anyone challenges you, we have everything we need to defend your ownership. Why would he do that? Why not just tell someone, sell the gold himself? Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression distant. Victor was dying. He knew it. His heart was failing, and he refused surgery. He said he'd lived long enough, done what he wanted to do. But I think at the end, he regretted dying alone. Regretted not having family to leave his fortune to. So, he left it to chance? To whoever bought the lodge? He left it to someone who needed it. That's what he told me. He said if someone was desperate enough or brave enough to buy this place, they probably deserved whatever they found. Marcus looked at Jessica with something like approval. He would have liked you, I think. A single mother spending her last dollars on an impossible gamble. That's exactly the kind of person Victor respected. Jessica felt tears prick her eyes. She'd never met Victor Brennan, but she felt connected to him through his journals, his careful documentation, his final gift to a stranger. I won't waste it. What he left. I'll use it for something good. I believe you will. Marcus closed his briefcase. Now, here's what we're going to do. First, I'm going to file paperwork establishing your mineral rights and property ownership beyond any possible challenge. Second, we're going to set up a trust to hold the gold and manage its sale. Third, we're going to hire security, proper security, not just cameras. This property needs to be protected until we've liquidated everything and secured your assets. How long will all that take? The legal paperwork, a few weeks. Setting up security, a few days. Liquidating the gold, he paused. That's the tricky part. We can't just walk into a bank with $24 million in gold bars. We need to sell it gradually through reputable dealers in amounts that won't raise red flags. That could take months, possibly a year. A year. Jessica's voice rose with anxiety. What do we do in the meantime? What if those men come back? What if someone else finds out? That's why we hire security immediately. And that's why we don't tell anyone else about this. As far as the world knows, you bought an old lodge and you're renovating it. The gold stays secret until we've secured everything. Marcus pulled out his phone and made a call. James? It's Marcus Holloway. I need a security team in White Pine Ridge. Full property surveillance, armed guards if possible, immediate start date. Yes, I know it's remote. Pay them whatever it takes. He listened for a moment. Excellent. I'll send you the address. Get someone up here by tomorrow. He ended the call and looked at Jessica. James Corrigan runs the best security firm in Colorado. He's discreet, expensive, and extremely effective. By tomorrow evening, you'll have armed guards and cameras covering every approach to this property. Nobody gets close without you knowing about it. How much is this going to cost? Don't worry about cost. I'm going to advance you funds against the gold's value. You'll pay me back when we start selling, but for now, you need protection more than you need to worry about money. He stood and gathered his papers. I need to get back to Denver tonight, but I'll return in 2 days with contract for you to sign and a preliminary sales strategy. In the meantime, don't open the door for anyone. Don't discuss this with anyone. And if those men come back, call the sheriff immediately. Marcus, Jessica stopped him as he headed for the door. Why are you doing this? Helping me like this? You could charge me a fortune in fees. Marcus smiled, and for the first time, she saw real warmth in his expression. Victor was my friend. He died alone in this lodge, and I always felt like I failed him somehow. Didn't visit enough, didn't push harder for him to get medical help, didn't understand how isolated he'd become. This is my chance to make sure his final gift goes to someone who deserves it. That's payment enough. After Marcus left, Jessica sat in the study with Victor's journals and let herself finally, truly believe. She was rich, not comfortable or secure. Rich, genuinely, impossibly, life-changingly wealthy. She could pay off every debt she'd ever had. Could give Emma every opportunity. Good schools, college, travel. Everything Jessica had never been able to provide. Could help other people, other struggling mothers, other families barely surviving. She could build something that mattered with this fortune. Could honor Victor's gift by using it for good. But first, she had to survive long enough to claim it. The men who'd come yesterday knew something. They'd be back, or others like them would come. The gold was a target on her back, a secret that made her vulnerable. Emma appeared in the doorway, buttons tucked under her arm. Mama, I'm hungry. Can we have dinner? Jessica pulled her daughter onto her lap and hugged her tight. Yeah, baby. Let's make the best dinner we can from what we have. And tomorrow, once the security people get here, maybe we could drive down to the store and get real groceries. Would you like that? Real groceries? Like fresh bread and apples and everything. Everything you want. Emma squealed with delight, and Jessica felt her heart swell. This was why. This was what the gold meant. Not wealth for its own sake, but freedom. The freedom to say yes to her daughter, to provide without calculating cost, to give Emma the childhood she deserved. The next day passed in a blur of activity. True to his word, Marcus sent a security team. For serious men in their 30s and 40s, all former military, led by a compact woman named Sarah Okonkwo, who'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan. They arrived in 2 trucks loaded with equipment, cameras, motion sensors, reinforced locks, communication gear. Sarah walked the property with Jessica, assessing sight lines and vulnerabilities. This is actually a good location for defense, she said. Single access road, clear views, natural barriers from the terrain. We'll set up cameras covering the main approach and the forest perimeter. Motion sensors at key points. 2 guards on duty 24/7, rotating shifts. And we'll install a panic button system. You press it, and we respond immediately, no questions asked. How long can you stay? As long as you need us. Mr. Holloway has us on contract for at least 6 months, renewable if necessary. By evening, the lodge was transformed into a fortress. Cameras covered every approach. Guards patrolled the perimeter. Sarah had set up a command post in one of the first-floor bedrooms, with monitors showing multiple camera feeds. Jessica felt safer than she had in days. She could breathe again, could let Emma play outside in the snow without constant fear of strangers approaching. That night, Sarah knocked on the study door where Jessica was reading Victor's journals. "Miss Torres? We had a visitor about an hour ago. Thought you should see the footage." On Sarah's laptop, Jessica watched camera footage from the main gate. A black pickup truck, the same one from the fake assessor's visit, had pulled up and stopped. A man had gotten out, tried the gate, found it locked and reinforced. He'd stood there for several minutes, clearly frustrated, before getting back in the truck and leaving. "They're definitely watching the property," Sarah said. "Testing security, seeing what they're up against. This won't be the last time they probe for weaknesses. What do? We stay vigilant. We document every approach. And if they try anything aggressive, we respond with force. Colorado law allows defense of property, especially in isolated areas. They have no legal right to be here. If they trespass, we can stop them." Jessica nodded, grateful for Sarah's competence and calm authority. "Thank you for taking this seriously. Mr. Holloway pays well, but more than that, he told us you're protecting something valuable. We take that seriously. Nobody gets to you or your daughter. That's the job." The following days settled into a routine. Emma adapted to their new security presence with remarkable ease, treating the guards as friendly fixtures like the furniture. She especially liked Sarah, who taught her basic self-defense moves and told stories about her military service. Jessica spent her time reading through all of Victor's documentation, understanding every detail of his operation. She learned about geological surveys or processing, about gold purity and market prices, about the careful balance Victor had maintained between extraction and secrecy. She also learned about the man himself through his personal journals. He'd been lonely, yes, but also content with his solitude. He'd found peace in the mountains that he'd never found in Denver's business world. He'd built the lodge as a sanctuary, a place where he could be fully himself without the masks required by society. In many ways, Jessica understood him. She too had been exhausted by the constant performance required to survive in a world that didn't care if you drowned. Here in this remote lodge, she could breathe, could be just herself, just Emma's mother, without the desperate edge of poverty sharpening every interaction. Marcus returned on December 27th with contracts and a plan. He'd found 3 reputable gold dealers willing to purchase bars in smaller quantities, 5 to 10 ounces at a time, for cash with minimal paperwork. Selling gradually would avoid triggering federal reporting requirements and would let them control the market timing. "We'll start with 100 ounces, Marcus explained. "About $200,000 at current prices. That gives you immediate liquidity for expenses while we set up the trust and plan the larger sales." Jessica signed papers until her hand cramped. Documents establishing the Summit Trust, with her as beneficiary and Marcus as trustee. Documents assigning the gold to the trust for protection. Documents authorizing Marcus to negotiate sales on her behalf. "You'll need to file amended tax returns," Marcus said. "Report the gold discovery and establish its value. We'll pay taxes quarterly as we sell, keeping everything legitimate and above board. The IRS can be aggressive about unreported assets, so we do this properly from the start. How much will I have after everything? After taxes and fees and security costs?" Marcus did calculations on his legal pad. "Conservatively, assuming we sell everything over the next 12 months, you'll net approximately $15 to $16 million. Enough to live comfortably for the rest of your life, invest wisely, and leave a substantial inheritance for Emma." $15 million. Jessica tried to wrap her mind around the number and failed. It was too large, too abstract, too impossible. "What do I do with that much money?" Marcus smiled. "Whatever you want. But I'd recommend setting up college funds for Emma, investing in diverse portfolios, perhaps establishing a charitable foundation if you want to give back. The key is not spending it all at once. With proper management, $15 million can provide income indefinitely." Jessica thought about the eviction notice that had started this entire journey, about sleeping in her car with Emma, about counting pennies for food and watching her daughter go without. "I want to help people," she said. "People like me. Single parents struggling to survive. Is there a way to do that without publicizing where the money came from? Absolutely. We can set up an anonymous charitable fund, make grants through intermediaries. Nobody needs to know you're behind it. Marcus looked at her approvingly. Victor would like that. Using his fortune to help others. The first gold sale happened on December 30th. Marcus drove 100 ounces, about 6 gold bars, down to Denver and sold them through a dealer he'd vetted carefully. He returned that evening with $198,400 in cash, bundled in bank wrappers. Jessica stared at the money spread across the dining table. It was more cash than she'd ever seen in her life. More than she'd earned in the past 3 years combined. "This is real," she whispered. "All of it's real. Very real." Marcus divided the cash into 2 stacks. "This half goes into a bank account I've opened for you. Working capital for expenses. The other half, I'd recommend keeping here in the safe as emergency funds. You're isolated up here. Having immediate access to cash is smart." Jessica carefully loaded $99,200 into Victor's study safe, feeling surreal. A week ago, she had $43. Now she had nearly $200,000, with millions more coming. The new year arrived quietly. Jessica and Emma celebrated with hot chocolate and board games by the fire, watching the snow fall outside their fortress of windows. The security team had a quiet celebration in their command post. Sarah brought Emma a small teddy bear as a gift, which made the little girl's face light up with joy. "Best New Year ever," Emma declared, hugging her new bear. "We have a castle and guards and everything." Jessica laughed. "It's pretty great, isn't it? Are we staying here forever?" Jessica pulled her daughter close. "As long as you want, baby. This is our home now. We're not going anywhere." Over the next month, Marcus sold gold gradually, converting bars into cash and depositing funds into accounts he'd established. The money accumulated faster than Jessica could process. By the end of January, she had over $3 million in liquid assets, with more sales scheduled weekly. The treasure hunters never returned. Sarah's security measures had apparently convinced them the lodge was too well protected to risk attacking. Or perhaps they'd realized that without proof of illegal activity, they had no legal claim to anything on the property. Life settled into a new normal. Jessica enrolled Emma in the White Pine Ridge Elementary School, using her newfound wealth to purchase a proper 4-wheel drive vehicle for the commute. Emma loved school, made friends quickly, and never mentioned the gold or their fortune to anyone, keeping their secret perfectly. Jessica spent her days reading, planning for the future, and slowly transforming the lodge into a real home. She hired contractors to modernize the plumbing and electrical systems. She purchased furniture and supplies. She turned the massive building into a comfortable, livable space while preserving Victor's original character. The study remained her favorite room. She kept Victor's journals there, his documentation, everything that told the story of how this impossible windfall had come to be. Sometimes she'd sit at his desk and imagine the man who'd built all this, who'd worked alone in these mountains, who'd left his fortune to a stranger with faith that it would be used well. "I won't let you down," she'd whisper to the empty room. "I'll make this mean something." Tom from the hardware store stopped by in February, ostensibly to check on how they'd survived the winter. Jessica invited him in for coffee and paid off her debt to him. The supplies he'd fronted, plus substantial interest, plus a generous bonus for his kindness. "You don't have to do this," Tom protested. "I told you to pay me back whenever. I can afford it now. I found some of Victor's old belongings, sold them to a collector. Got lucky." The lie came easily. Marcus had coached her on cover stories, vague explanations about antiques, and collectibles that justified her sudden wealth without revealing the gold. "Well, I'm glad things worked out." Tom accepted the payment. "You and Emma settling in okay?" "Better than okay. This place is perfect for us. Victor would be happy to know someone's living here again. He loved this lodge, but always seemed sad to me. All that space for just one person." After Tom left, Jessica stood at the great room windows looking out at the mountains. He was right. The lodge had been lonely when Victor lived here alone, but now it was filled with life. Emma's laughter echoed through the halls. Security guards joked in the command post. The building had purpose again, warmth again. By March, Marcus had sold over $6 million worth of gold. The trust account held more money than Jessica could spend in 10 lifetimes. She'd already established college funds for Emma, set up investment portfolios that would provide income indefinitely, and created the charitable foundation she'd dreamed about. The Summit Foundation, she called it, named after the lodge that had saved her life. Its mission was simple: provide emergency assistance to single parents facing eviction, homelessness, or crisis. The foundation would pay overdue rent, prevent evictions, provide security deposits for new housing, offer job training, and child care assistance. Everything Jessica had needed but couldn't afford, the foundation would provide to others in her situation. Marcus helped her hire staff, social workers, and administrators who could screen applications and distribute funds. Jessica remained anonymous, hidden behind the foundation's corporate structure. Nobody would know that the woman distributing millions in aid had been homeless herself 3 months ago. The first grants went out in April. 20 families in Colorado received assistance: rent payments, moving costs, security deposits. Jessica read their thank you letters with tears streaming down her face. "Dear Summit Foundation," one woman wrote, "you saved my family. We were 3 days from eviction, sleeping in our car, and your grant paid our back rent and gave us a fresh start. My children have a home again because of you. I will never forget this kindness." This was what Victor's goal meant. Not wealth for its own sake, but transformation. Lives changed, families saved, hope restored to people who'd lost it. Emma found her mother crying over the letters. "Mama, why are you sad?" "I'm not sad, baby. I'm happy." These are happy tears. Because we're helping people? Yes. Because we can help people. Because we have enough to share. Emma climbed onto her lap. Victor would be happy, don't you think, that we're sharing his treasure? Jessica hugged her daughter tight. "Yeah, baby. I think he'd be very happy." By summer, the snow had melted from the mountains, revealing green valleys and wildflower meadows. The lodge's wraparound deck became Jessica's favorite place to sit with morning coffee, watching the sunrise paint the peaks in golden rose. Sarah's security team remained in place, though the threat seemed to have passed. No more strangers probed the property. No more suspicious vehicles appeared. Word must have spread that the Summit Lodge was protected, off-limits to treasure hunters and thieves. Marcus had sold nearly all the extracted gold by August. The total came to just over $23 million, slightly less than Victor's estimate, but still more than Jessica could have imagined. After taxes, fees, and expenses, the trust held $15.7 million in liquid assets. Jessica was, by any definition, wealthy, not just comfortable or secure, genuinely, substantially rich. But she lived simply. She kept the lodge, her sanctuary, her home. She drove a modest SUV, wore normal clothes, lived a life that from the outside looked merely comfortable rather than wealthy. The money existed in accounts and investments, working quietly to generate income and fund the foundation. Emma started second grade in the fall at White Pine Ridge Elementary. She had friends, hobbies, a normal childhood. She'd mostly forgotten the desperate times before they'd found the lodge, the way children do. Her memories were of the castle in the mountains, the guards who taught her self-defense, the mother who smiled more and worried less. Jessica never forgot. She remembered every night in the car, every eviction notice, every moment of crushing fear that she couldn't protect her daughter. Those memories kept her grounded, kept her using the wealth responsibly, kept her focused on helping others instead of hoarding resources. The Summit Foundation expanded rapidly. By its first anniversary, it had helped over 300 families across Colorado. Jessica hired more staff, opened offices in Denver and Colorado Springs, established partnerships with social service agencies. The foundation became known for fast, effective assistance with minimal bureaucracy, exactly what desperate families needed. And still, Jessica remained anonymous. The foundation's board consisted of professionals Marcus had recruited. Jessica attended meetings via phone, made decisions from her mountain lodge, kept her identity secret. She was just the mysterious benefactor, the unnamed donor who'd funded everything. Robert Chun, from a volunteer fire department, figured it out eventually. He stopped by one evening in October, ostensibly to check the lodge's smoke detectors, but his expression suggested other motives. "Can we talk?" he asked, his weathered face serious. Jessica invited him into the study. "What's on your mind?" "The Summit Foundation. It's your operation, isn't it?" Jessica's heart skipped, but she kept her face neutral. "What makes you think that?" "Because it appeared right after you moved here. Because I've seen the Foundation's address. It's a Denver law office, same one that handled Victor Brennan's estate. Because you're living in a multi-million-dollar property you bought for $800, and you're not working any job I can see, yet you're comfortable." He paused. "And because Tom told me about the collector who supposedly bought Victor's antiques." "There's no collector. You found something up here. Something Victor left behind." Jessica studied him carefully. Robert had been kind to her from the start, had helped protect her property, had welcomed her into the community. But trust was dangerous when $23 million was at stake. "If I did find something," she said slowly, "if there was something valuable here, what would you do with that information?" "Nothing. Absolutely nothing." Robert leaned forward. "Victor was a friend of mine. I was one of the few people he talked to in his last years. He told me once that he'd made sure his fortune would go to someone who needed it, someone who'd use it right. I didn't understand what he meant until I saw what you're doing." He gestured broadly. "The Foundation helping families. That's what Victor would have wanted. That's using wealth the way it should be used." "So, you're not going to tell anyone?" "Who would I tell? And why?" "You're not hurting anyone. You're helping people. The town's happy to have someone living at the lodge again. You're good for the community." He smiled slightly. "Your secret's safe with me." After Robert left, Jessica felt something release in her chest. Someone knew the truth, and the world hadn't ended. In fact, having one person in the community who understood, who approved, made her feel less isolated. She wasn't alone anymore. She had Emma, she had Marcus's support, she had Sarah's security team, and now she had Robert's quiet understanding. A found family built on shared secrets and mutual trust. The second winter in the lodge was easier than the first. Jessica knew how to manage the generator, how to read the weather patterns, how to stock supplies before storms hit. Emma had grown confident and happy, her initial shyness replaced by a bubbly personality that charmed teachers and neighbors alike. They decorated the great room for Christmas with a massive tree that touched the cathedral ceiling. Emma made ornaments in school, paper snowflakes, and painted pine cones that they hung with care. On Christmas Eve, they sat by the fire exchanging presents, modest gifts that meant something rather than expensive displays of wealth. Emma gave her mother a hand-drawn card showing the lodge surrounded by hearts. Inside, in careful 7-year-old handwriting, "Thank you for our castle and our life. You're the best mama in the world." Jessica gave Emma a locket on a silver chain. Inside were 2 tiny photographs, one of Emma as a baby, one of them together taken just last week. "So you'll always remember where we came from and how far we've traveled." That night, after Emma fell asleep, Jessica returned to the study and pulled out Victor Brennan's original letter, the one she'd found that first day. She read it again in the firelight, his careful handwriting and thoughtful words. "I hope you find what you need here," he'd written. She had. More than she'd ever imagined needing or wanting. Not just money, though that had been transformative, but safety, peace, purpose. The freedom to be more than just a woman surviving crisis after crisis. The chance to build something meaningful. Jessica pulled out a piece of the lodge's stationery and began writing her own letter. Not to Victor, he was long gone, but to whoever might buy the lodge someday, decades in the future, after she and Emma had moved on or passed away. "To whom it may concern," she wrote, "if you're reading this, you found the Summit Lodge the way I did. Probably desperate, probably scared, probably betting everything on an impossible hope. This place saved my life. Not just because of what was hidden here, though that helped, but because it gave me space to breathe, to heal, to remember who I was before poverty tried to grind me down to nothing. I found wealth here, yes. A fortune that changed everything. But more importantly, I found home. I found purpose. I found proof that sometimes the universe rewards desperate courage with impossible grace. Whatever brought you here, I hope you find what you need. I hope these walls shelter you the way they sheltered me. I hope the mountains give you peace. And if you're lucky enough to find treasure like I did, I hope you use it well. Use it to help others, to build something good, to prove that money can be a tool for healing instead of just another source of pain. The Lodge remembers. It holds stories in every timber and stone. My story is here now, layered over Victor's, waiting for yours to join us. Make it a good story. Make it matter. With hope and gratitude, Jessica Torres, December 2025. She sealed the letter in an envelope and placed it in the study safe, next to Victor's journals and the remaining documentation. Someday, someone would find it. Someday, the cycle would continue. But that was future concern. Tonight, Jessica had everything she needed. A sleeping daughter upstairs, a secure home, wealth enough to help thousands of families, a life transformed from desperation to purpose. She walked through the lodge turning off lights, checking locks out of habit, even though Sarah's security team monitored everything. In each room, she paused to remember how far they'd come. The great room where they'd huddled by the fire that first terrifying night. The kitchen where she'd made terrible pancakes with supplies from Tom. The study where she'd discovered Victor's letter and everything had changed. Every room held memories now. Not just Victor's lonely years, but her triumph, her transformation, her proof that impossible things happen to people who refuse to give up. Jessica climbed the stairs to the third floor and checked on Emma one last time. Her daughter slept peacefully, the locket around her neck catching moonlight from the window. Buttons the elephant sat on the pillow beside her, a threadbare reminder of harder times. "We made it, baby," Jessica whispered. "We actually made it." She returned to her own room, the master suite with its impossible views, and stood at the window looking out over the moonlit mountains. Somewhere out there, buried under snow, was the cave that held the last remnants of Victor's gold. They'd left a few cases unsold, insurance against future needs, a reminder that the fortune was real. But Jessica didn't need reminders anymore. She'd internalized the truth that desperate courage could lead to miraculous transformation. That hope, even when it seemed foolish, was worth believing in. That sometimes the universe caught you when you were falling and gave you not just survival, but something extraordinary. She'd gambled $800 on an abandoned lodge in a blizzard. She'd won $23 million in hidden gold. But more than that, she'd won back her life, her future, her ability to be more than just a woman drowning in poverty. She'd won the chance to help others, to prove that wealth could heal instead of corrupt, to honor Victor's legacy and build something that mattered. That was the real treasure, not the gold, though that had been the catalyst. The real treasure was transformation, from desperate survival to purposeful living, from crushing fear to confident peace, from a woman who couldn't afford her daughter's shoes to someone who could change hundreds of lives with the stroke of a pen. Jessica Torres had bought a lodge for $800 before Christmas. She'd found a fortune worth millions. But what she'd really discovered was proof that impossible dreams sometimes came true, that desperate gambles sometimes paid off, that the world occasionally rewarded courage with grace. And that was worth more than any amount of gold. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.